My name is Ryan Harp, and this is assignment 2 for FTH 202, the revolver course. Today is June 15th of 2025, and today's assignment is all about disassembly and the cycle of operations. As you can see, we've got a firearm in the workspace today, so with that being said, safety is paramount. First thing, we check the workspace, make sure there's no live ammunition anywhere in the workspace. Next, we visually and physically inspect the weapon in the chamber. As you can see, no ammunition. Barrel is free and clear of obstructions, and we will keep the action open until we start using it. The trigger will not be manipulated, and the barrel will always stay in a appropriate orientation. Of course, we're going to be doing a disassembly. We're using a firearm, so some other areas of PPE that we might want to look at is eye protection. There's a lot of springs. Don't want to
got the side plate off. We can see the internals of the revolver. So starting from the handle, and we'll move up and then forward as we go. We can see we've got our mainspring here. We've got our hammer. Included in our hammer is our double action sear. We've got our trigger spring, our trigger, our cylinder stop, the hand. As we move up a little bit, we've got the transfer bar, the firing pin assembly, and of course we've got the entire cylinder still in place. So, some of the things these parts and pieces do as far as the cycle of operations is, so this transfer bar right here, we can see as the trigger is pulled, it slides up. That allows it to work directly in the firing portion of the cycle of operations. The cylinder right here, as we can see, is directly involved in feeding, chambering, locking, unlocking, and extracting and ejecting. So when it comes to revolver pieces, this may very well be the most used portion. So the cylinder will spin, and then to extract and eject, you just push on the plunger for the extraction and ejection. And then also the part that falls into feeding and chambering is going to be the hand working in action with the cylinder. Next up, we have the firing pin assembly sitting in here. That's directly involved in the firing stage of the cycle of operations. The hammer will rotate, the transfer bar comes up, and as the hammer is released, it makes contact with the transfer bar, striking the firing pin. So the hammer is involved in the firing and cocking phase of the cycle of operations. So, and because it's a double action pistol, it works in two different ways with firing and cocking. One is to manually cock the hammer, and we can see that the hammer sear, I don't know if you could see it in there because the hand's in the way, directly interacts with the sear on the trigger. Then when the trigger is pulled, the hammer rotates forward, striking the transfer bar, pushing the primer into the firing pin into the primer. Or if we're utilizing it in double action, you can see that the sear on the trigger works in tandem.
All right, now
with
that
the double
we've
action
got
sear,
both
brings it to the
retainer
point
pins out,
right before it fires, and then when the
side
trigger
plate
breaks, it
pins out,
slams forward, striking.
we'll go ahead and pop
the
this
transfer bar
side plate
into,
off.
Front firing pin.
Some of them are
The
a
trigger,
little tricky,
of course, is
a
directly
little
involved
tight,
in the
especially
cocking and
being
firing
brand
stage.
new.
When you're operating in double action,
My
if you're
tried and
operating
true
in single
method
action,
working on Smith &
then
Wessons
it is
is just a
solely
rawhide
involved
mallet
in
to the
the
opposite
firing
side.
stage. So mainspring, as we look down here, is involved in the firing and the cocking stage. So it puts the tension on the hammer to drive that inertia forward, allowing it to strike. The extractor, again, is directly, which the extractor ejector is directly involved in the extracting and the ejecting stage. So again, we have the hand right here. It sits in a slot and turns the ratchet as the trigger is manipulated, or as the hammer is manipulated. And this is directly involved in the chambering, locking, and it's indirectly involved in the cocking. So then inside of here, I don't know if we can get a focus with the cylinder there. I've got the cylinder free right now, but as the cylinder rotates, you can see the cylinder stop push up into the cylinder, locking it in place. And what we'll do is we'll remove the cylinder so we can try and get a good view of where the cylinder stop sits. Right in here. And the cylinder stop is directly involved in the locking, and it's indirectly involved in the chambering, ensuring that it's locked in the appropriate place. Alright, to cycle through all stages of the cycle of operations with the revolver, the first thing we must do is stage 1, which is feeding. So in order to feed, we would start with the weapon with a closed cylinder, open that cylinder, again, free and clear. All we have is dummy ammunition, no live ammo. Going to place them into the cylinder. And that would conclude our feeding stage. So now with the rounds fed into the cylinder, our next step would be... Okay, so now with the chamber fed, the next thing that we're going to do is the cocking stage. And because the cheek plate, side plate, whatever you want to call it, is not on, we're going to use my hand to force, to keep the hand in place. We'll use my finger. So as the hammer is pulled back, you can see it unlocks the chamber and drives the mainspring to the rear. The hammer engages with the sear surface on the trigger and the sear on the hammer, and the transfer bar is pushed up. So with that unlocking, it allowed the cylinder to rotate and chamber an appropriate round. When the cylinder got in place, it ended up locking right here on one of these points where it engages with the cylinder stop, which is down in here. So the next step is firing. The trigger is pulled to the rear. The sear disengages with the hammer sear, and a round is fired. So in double action, everything works in tandem with the pull of the trigger. So when the trigger is pulled, the hammer moves to the rear. The hand is pushing the cylinder forward, rotating, unlocking the cylinder stop, allowing the cylinder to rotate and bring the next round into the appropriate and chamber the next round. As it continues, it engages the cylinder stop, which locks the cylinder. And as the trigger is pulled, instead of disengaging with the hammer sear, it is now disengaging with the double action sear, and it just breaks forward, and that completes the firing phase. Now, for the extracting and ejecting, in order to extract and eject, we push on the bolt using the thumb piece, swing the yoke out. Once the yoke has been moved past the firearm, we just push on that spring-loaded extractor rod, and we can eject all of our ammunition, and again, we have empty chambers. After completing the cycle of operations, the next step was a complete disassembly of the firearm. The mainspring and trigger spring were already removed at this point, using a paper clip to keep the springs at full tension. The next thing to remove was the hand. After removing the hand, I had to remove the hammer, the trigger. The detents all had to be carefully monitored to make sure they didn't go flying. Same thing with removing the lock. There's a little spring inside there. Had to make sure that stayed in place. The complete disassembly of the firearm did reveal some oxidation that came straight from the manufacturer that way. So after completing all of this, my next step was a complete cleaning and scrubbing down the weapon with some steel wool to try and prevent any further oxidation.
Sources for the assignment come from Sonoran Desert Institute, FTH 202, Module 2, Single and Double Action Revolver Components and Operations, FTH 202 Lecture, and the Taurus Model 66 Double Action Revolver, Sonoran Scholastic by Frank Vigil.